This has been by far the most underwhelming and disappointing DLC I have ever seen in a Sword Online game, despite the fact that the devs really set up a low bar by having no promotional activities or launch streams and the like. So much so that in Ritual of Bonds Part 1, even the translators themselves seemed so uninspired that they decided to add some personality to these characters that wasn't even there in the original Japanese text. I have no idea how that works, but good job on that one, translators, thank you. And all of that underwhelmingness being just exacerbated by the fact that it really felt like they ripped out of a staple of the SAO games, especially Aquria games, the bed scenes themselves, took those 5 minutes, nice and cheeky scenes, and turned them into hour-long chores for these characters. And the worst part of it is, even the characters did not have their usual personal flair. They were written so bland and without anything that stood out that it was uninspired. All of those bed scenes were basically formulaic, more or less saying the same thing with different words, wrapped around in a, well, formulaic story. And I say story in quotes because that can barely be called a story in the first place. Now, I know that is quite a negative sentiment to start with. Nah, that's actually the end of the sentence. No buts there, sadly. That's just how it is. But if you like the shirt I'm wearing, Lens Squad merch, the first day merch, all of that are available on my Teespring page. The link is going to be down below in the description. And now, welcome SAO survivors. We're gonna talk a bit, well, a bit, as much as there's to talk about, on the Ritual of Bonds DLC Part 1 for Art Online Last Recollection. Now, I'll be honest, I wanted to approach this DLC with an open mind. Sure, it looked like they had clearly ripped the series' staple bed scenes from the base game and turned it into a paid DLC, but maybe there was something more. At least the story around it could have been something. After all, this was Aquria, the team who gave us the likes of Warriors of the Sky free update in Hollow Realization and the Gamer's Heroine story chain in Alicization Lycoris. Again, both were free content drops, and while the Gamer's Heroines in Lycoris was nothing particularly special, it still featured a great homage to each of the characters with its story. And Warriors of the Sky, that was a beautiful addition to the game that, while free, can easily challenge paid content they had at the time and was a super high bar to set. And of course, how can I forget the Sacrament dungeons in Hollow Realization? They were free content too, if I remember correctly. 3 sets of a dozen different dungeons with specific mechanics. Considering all of that, they had to have something more than just paid bed scenes, right? However, no promotion whatsoever was the first red flag, and it was very clear from the Ritual of Bonds DLC Part 1 that Yosuke Futami, the Gameverse lead, is tired and the entire team just wants to move on from the series. Futami doesn't even list Last Recollection in his bio among all the other SAO games. For some reason, I don't know why, I don't want to imply anything, but it's just something weird that I have noticed. And that tired nature, it just reflects in every aspect of this Last Recollection DLC. The story takes place before the ending of the game, but it's so far removed from everything that I don't even know why they had to make it so, not like it affects anything. It's a single dungeon that is completely trivial and empty, although I'll still be the devil's advocate here and state that specific aspect is likely intentional. I'll get to it in a second. And that single dungeon, you need to run 9 times, well, 19 times actually, because each character requires you to do it twice, although with a shortcut and a final run for the epilogue if you're just doing it with a single character. The dungeon itself has a single puzzle for you to engage with, but it's not even a puzzle because it makes so little sense that your partner character has to tell you what to do due to arbitrary reasons, while the game just outright mocks Philly and Tia by making them always make the wrong choice, so you need to do what they tell you not to do, which I find That's a bit rude for the characters. And the story of the dungeons, the dialogue, it is so formulaic that at some point I just found myself doing Duolingo on my phone as I was recording, because I've just come to terms with the fact that every single run, all characters say the exact same things. I'm not joking, quite literally. We start the dungeon runs with "Please come to the dungeon with me as a duo." That caused an awkward moment of "Oh, you wanna pair up with me like a date?" And then this is followed by "Oh my god, I can't believe this huge dungeon was under the Obsidia Palace scene," and spoilers, it's not huge at all. Then an "Oh no, this slab of thing that says which door we should open is not clear with its descriptions. How do we do this?" That results in your partner literally just telling you which door to pick all the time, so it's not even a puzzle, as I mentioned. Unless the writers wanted to make fun of a character, which doesn't even factor into the story, mind you, because the next scene is Kirito thanking the character for their help, regardless of if they picked right or wrong. This is followed by a "Oh no, it's some mini-boss, it's gonna be dangerous," which isn't even a mini-boss, it's 4 enemies that are even easier than the ones during the puzzle rooms prior. Then you run past 4 golems, which are literally the only enemies in the dungeon otherwise that are freely roaming, and we have a chat about why the partner thinks this dungeon was created, and it's a dungeon that tests the trust of a pair, where all characters are basically the "you can look at my homework, but please change the words a bit" meme. Then we get a reskinned boss from the main game, twice actually. Some of them are reskinned twice because we have 9 characters to go through with. Then we have the wedding dress reveal, an awkward moment of "Oh, you look good, how about me, how do I look?" kind of a scene. Then we interact with the ritual, which spawns an egg. We go back and have the bed scene where you imbue the egg with emotions, and there's only so many times I can tolerate the "You may touch it and feel the warmth. I meant the egg. What were you thinking, Kirito-kun?" style of joke. It really gets tiring when more or less half of the characters do it. Then we go back to the dungeon, we fight the boss again if we take the shortcut, which also has a lengthy dialogue about what a shortcut is for every single character, that it makes the boss more powerful, supposedly, if you can even feel that change. You put the egg back in a slot, you do a wow with the partner and head out, and they're surprised they kept the dress, and then another dialogue as to how they'd love to return as a duo, hinting at the epilogue scene. It's literally the exact same story with very minor changes in word choices and nothing more. Nobody talks about anything interesting, nobody has any meaningful interactions with Kirito. You're basically the teacher going through everybody's homework when all of them copied the homework from each other. Lisbeth's voice actor, Takagaki Ayahi, is having a lot of fun, which kinda saves Lisbeth's run because that was genuinely fun and interesting to go through solely thanks to Takagaki Ayahi's performance there, and the translators are just replacing extremely uninspired dialogue with some actually funny lines here and there. You know, I remember the thing about Strea during TN Premiere's bed scenes and all that kind of stuff. And you know, it's the translators that are sprinkling some kind of life into an otherwise unremarkable and boring dialogue, but that's really pretty much it. I know it is not fair to compare the main game story written by someone like Akatsuki Kana from Violet Evergarden and a bed scene DLC that who knows who wrote, clearly based on a template they were provided, but this should not have been the result. This is quite a disappointment all around, considering Aquria's past with even free content drops, as well as Last Recollection having the best story and writing in the SAO gameverse in general throughout its main campaign. I see some people complaining about things like where is the end game and all that kind of stuff, but the reality is such things were never promised to begin with, and not only that, but the dungeon was clearly designed as a bridge for the difficulty spike that leads into the final boss fight. The dungeon itself is extremely easy to farm for the kind of drops it has and how much targeted drops you can go for, but not necessarily great stuff if you have already grinded even some endgame content in the main game already, which is fine. And if you found the final boss of the main game to be too much of a hassle, you will get some benefit from this DLC dungeon drops. But what I want to convey with this bit is that I'm not one to harp on the game for expecting something they never promised. This was clearly designed as a transitionary, improvement dungeon for mid-game players and the like. And I am not that desperate for attention where I just throw away my spine and hide my own stupidity behind expectations that were not set by the devs but by myself. I did hope there'd be something more than bed scenes, a little bit more, the semblance of a proper story, even if it's a small story, but I never really expected it, if that makes sense. My point is, even the content they offered, they have given us was bad in the first place on its own. I don't need to talk about my dreams and hopes and all that kind of stuff. And coming from the team who made the things like Sacrament Dungeons and Warriors of the Sky, let alone the paid Abyss of the Shrine Maiden chapters for Hollow Realization, Ritual of Bonds is a real letdown all around. Extremely formulaic, extremely repetitive, not a shred of personality in dialogues, no interesting visuals or set pieces in the dungeon, but an extremely short and empty one, all the while wasting an hour of your time for a 5-minute bed scene, where even the bed scene itself is uninspired, repetitive, or outright criminal. Quite literally, read the text. Which is the main source of disappointment for me in this case. After Alicization Lycoris having the best bed scenes in the entire series, diving deeper into the personalities of these characters, their worries, joys, dreams, and the like for the future, they really reminded me of the heroine quests back in Hollow Realization, which were top tier Art Online content. I just really don't know what went wrong here in Ritual of Bonds, that I did not feel an ounce of care while playing the DLC. Everything in Ritual of Bonds Part 1 felt like, alright, wrap it up boys, SAO Gameverse is over, but we promised the bed scene DLC, so just cobble something up, here's the script template, just change the words a bit and it'll be fine. Maybe it was the low interest and sales of the game in general, which was quite a shame as I talked about in my first impressions review. Maybe it's just Futami and Co being tired with the series at this point, it's been 10 years, understandable, but from a player perspective, the reason really does not matter, as the result is just uninspired. And the entire ordeal just made me lose all kind of interest in the upcoming second DLC, which is, in my eyes, is probably gonna be the exact same as this one. But that's it, that's all I have to say on Ritual of Bonds Part 1. Subscribe for more and hit the bell icon. That game report featuring the monthly success of Integral Factor and the news from Variant Showdown and Last Recollection will be in there. Follow on Twitter and Facebook for the latest and fastest news. Thank you very much to my patrons and members for supporting the channel and to you for watching. Until next time, keep your head